Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 292. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're honored to have with us the beloved scholar and internationally acclaimed author, Bruce Richards. Bruce, how you doing?
Pretty well.
So you're an author here in Vermont. So you just recently published your latest book, Jumping the Shark and Other True Stories Except One. This has been pretty interesting. It's been getting a lot of good reviews lately. So Bruce, talk to us a little bit about the inspiration behind the short stories that you put in your collection.
Well, I've just been, for about 10 years, just been writing down stories I think are either, interesting or funny or somebody might want to read. So inspiration's a big word. I'm not sure if that fits.
And so who is your book for? Who's the audience for your book?
Difficult question. At first blush, I'd say that I wrote it for myself. I mean, I wrote what I wanted, when I want it, in the way I want it to, just the selfish sort of perspective. Upon reflection, I would say I'm addressing my audience members, particularly individually, even in a lot of the things I write. So I guess I can't say I'm writing for myself if I'm trying to talk to people. And I have a warm sense of my readers. I feel somehow close to them. Once I threw out the bigots in the introduction, I did ask all the bigots to leave my book in the introduction. But after that, anybody reading it is someone that I sort of feel a funny connection to. Maybe it's crazy that I feel that, but so it's the reader. I don't know who he or she is. Some are my friends, that's nice, but others I feel friendly toward.
Well, and also in your book, you actually address your younger self, and your younger self also addresses your older self. Was there some sort of language between the two where is your older self trying to teach your younger self something? And is your younger self trying to remind your older self of something?
Yes. And that happened just by chance. You know how writing goes. You're writing along and you're following something and not preordained often. It's just you're following something. And I was I had found something that Bruce in 1982 wrote about going to New Orleans on my trip around the country, where I was on sabbatical to do a photo essay of American high schools. I stopped off at New Orleans. It just happened to be Mardi Gras, which I really didn't know. But as I wrote an essay at the time, as that essay says, but nobody believes me that I didn't know it was Mardi Gras. So here I am in Mardi Gras, and I wrote about it, and I took lots of pictures. And so now I'm looking at, and I'm publishing what I wrote then, but I'm critiquing it as I go, because I see, a more naive person writing. I see a person who writes in a different style than I write in. I is more pretentious and longer sentences and bigger words than I use now. So I'm critiquing it, and then almost, it's not magic, but it just all of a sudden kind of happened that as I'm writing, Bruce in 1982 starts talking to me directly and saying, "Hey, old man, where do you get off criticizing my writing?" And that sets up a dialogue between Bruce in 1982 and Bruce now. And I point out a lot of that he was reckless and did things that he shouldn't have, and he pointed out that I've become feckless. I've become afraid of things and won't. I couldn't today do the things that Bruce 82 was able to do, drive around the country by himself and do all these things. And he said, I wouldn't do that. And I said, yeah, well, you were on your farewell tour, as you called it, before coming back to be with Leslie. And you almost blew the greatest relationship of your life, you stupid Bruce 82. So see, that's what happened. We went back and forth. And then that's when the book takes a turn. Again, it wasn't pre-planned, but then I say to him, well, your writing basically is not so good. You were always a better photographer than you were a writer. And then he says, yeah, and you? How about you? So that's where I pause and in the next chapter of the book, I say, well, let's see, my readers, what you think. I'm going to show you a lot of photography, and you tell me whether I should pursue writing or photography. And then there's a lot of photography in the rest of the book,
Right.
including lots of pictures from the kids around the country in 1981, 1982. Kids who I promised then, when I took their picture all over the country, schools all over, when I took their picture, I promised them that I was going to put it into a book. So in this book, I apologize for being a little late in actually doing that. Well, what's 40 years among friends, So these kids are now in their 60s, as they pointed out to me on Facebook. Some of the people, especially ones that were in the high school where I taught, have just pointed out to me, yeah, well, you keep calling us kids, we're 62 years old. A group of them, the class of 78, just invited me to their 45th reunion down in New Jersey, which I'm going to go to at the end of the month. And that'll be weird. I haven't seen them since then. And 45 years, oh my goodness. So, but a lot of them bought the book and want me to come there and sign the book and be at their reunion. So I will. So that's fun.
Right. Now, out of these stories, because you're not telling us which one is not true. So, out of these stories,
No,
which one did you have the most fun writing or reminiscing on?
Oh gosh. Oh boy, tough question. I mean, I enjoyed writing lots of them. Some of the later stuff is a little more painful, so I guess I say not the later stuff. Although I had a certain amount of, when you confront less sophomoric themes, it's not quite as much fun, but it's fun in a deeper way. The earlier stories, probably, the title story I had fun writing and reminiscing about the event, Jumping the Shark. And I also enjoyed, the one I just talked about is called 82 Bruce, about me in 82 Bruce. And I that was fun because that one took on its own life. So that was a lot of fun. Right. Yeah. And the third I'd say would be the story about Hawaii, Cabby Shot at Home. That was another one that was fun to tell, not always fun to live. Cabby Shot at Home.
So what was that one about? How did that sounds like an interesting one. You want to give people a kind of a brief summary on what a cabby being shot at home is about?
The first chapter in it is Suzanne Takes Me Down. To celebrate my good fortune and having flunked my draft physical in the spring of 1969 and not having to go to Vietnam and get shot, I went to Hawaii and got shot. So that's how it opens, and it tells about me following a beautiful woman. Of course, it's always about the women to Hawaii and the stuff that happened in 69 and 70. Yeah. Yeah. I was when I left Hawaii, it's mentioned in the story, I was in line with the Grateful Dead were behind me in the line. And the guy right behind me was Pigpen. And my nickname in college was Pigpen. And so he and I bonded over this. And then when the guy asked me, "Do you have any drugs in your luggage?" I turned to Pigpen and said, "Oh, is marijuana a drug?" And then Pigpen said, "No, man, it's just a weed." And then the guy looking at my luggage got angry and threw my luggage all up in the air, up in underwear going here, all over the place. And there was nothing in it. I was just making a joke for the Grateful Dead. But so so then I just had to clean up all the luggage. But it was worth it because Pigpen laughed. Yep. Rough Pigpen laugh.
Are people to take out of each one of your stories? Is there a lesson or a moral, or is it just entertainment for purely entertainment value?
I don't think one should write with a moral in mind. That's a certain type of literature that tends to be awful and didactic. But if you're telling the truth, in my introduction, I say what I'm trying to do. What I always told my creative writing students, I gave them commandments. I used to write on the board. The first commandment was, "Thou shalt not bore thy reader." And the second one was, "Discover your voice and speak in it." And the third commandment was, "Tell the truth." So these are the things that I was teaching my students. Your own voice, the truth as best you know it, and don't bore the reader. And that's the one I have to worry about the most.
Right.
So that's what I try to do. Now, are there morals in it? Well, if you're telling the truth, there's things to be learned. And there's an arc to the book, chronological arc, which shows me changing. So that's telling a story that is maybe worth knowing. And
for those that might be looking at, I'm thinking about writing a memoir, I'm thinking about writing a book, but I just haven't gotten there yet. What's your advice for those that are kind of hesitant to actually get on the computer or pick up a pen and start writing?
Well, you have to apply yourself. You have to apply your ass to a chair, and you have to start. and you have to see where it takes you, and you have to persist. Some of these journeys turn out to be pretty good, and some don't go anywhere. And when it doesn't go where, you say, well, throw it in the garbage can. Of course, I still write pen on paper, so I still crumble up and throw in garbage cans. But the key is to, what I would do is I would have a certain time every day where I'm going to write. And if I don't feel inspired, so what? Maybe something will happen anyway. You don't know. And when I was teaching, full time, it would always be in the morning before my family got up. And that's hard for me because, I tend to be a little lazy, like to sleep a lot. But boy, the first thing in the morning, you probably know. I mean, there's something about, dawn that's really great. And writing at that point with nobody bothering you. And I would write, and I still write at my great grandfather's roll top desk, not with a quill pen, but close, just my ballpoint pen, kind of like he wrote. And I have a picture of him sitting at that desk writing his sermons. He was a well-known Methodist minister. He'd be writing his sermons, and it was all 100 years before me. That's kind of this little thing in my world that This is John Wesley Richards, and he was born exactly 100 years before I was, and his son was born exactly 100 years before my son. That's my grandfather and my son, born in 84. One in 1884 and the other in 1984. And so I have an affinity with this guy, although I have argued with him in my writing. He being a Methodist minister, and me being all I can say is like a hopeful agnostic. So I didn't like his certainty about everything,
Right.
Right. So anyway, that's my writing world. His old desk.
Where do you see authors and writing and publishing in the next 10 years?
Well, I don't know. That's a scary question, isn't it? I mean, the big trend has been less people reading full books and getting more and more of your entertainment and information in the tiniest forms, which are not conducive to understanding the human condition. Let's face it. Little sound bites that don't make it. They masquerade as reality, but I think longer forms are necessary. But it's been fading. So hopefully there will be a core of real readers, and they will, and they will persist, and they will inform folks. I'm hopeful about that. I just read, I have an old Harper's magazine from 2000. It was the 150th anniversary of Harper's magazine. I just found it, my old stuff, and been reading it. And that's what they were worried about, saying, we're on the brink of people not really examining things, but following lockstep through very short media. So that was a concern 23 years ago, and it's a bigger concern now.
As they say, someone who's been a prolific writer for many years. What's your next project?
I do have a dear friend who will patronize me and likes my photography a lot, and he's pushing me to do photo books. So I may do a couple photo books, and also he's pushing me to dust off the novel that I wrote 25 years ago and almost published with the New York Publishing House, and then it fell through, so I put it aside. So that's got to happen. The novel I have to read it, have to reread it and see if it's any good. It's about lifeguarding in the 60s, so maybe the world's ready for the 60s novel. It's a funny thing about that novel, though. When I didn't publish it, and I got sick of the process, and I wasn't going to go and kiss people's butts to get it published. And so I just took it to where I was teaching at Oxbow. It was the year 2000, and they had a time capsule. So I put it in the time capsule with a note on top. It says, it's going to dug up in 2050. It says, "This is my last ditch effort to get published. Sure, I'm dead, but it's still worth a try." So that's there. Eventually, some human will see that novel, even if I don't publish it now. It'll 2050, Oxbow. Yeah, Oxbow High School.
Well, yeah, you need to get that published, especially since you're seeing such a great turnout for your other book.
Yeah, but that's an earlier incarnation of Bruce the writer. So is he any good? Well, I got to see. It's a fairly long novel. It's 3 months in 3 summers, showing the rise and fall of the 60s, the perspective of a bunch of goofy lifeguards on the Jersey Shore.
Right.
Based on what I did, really. I was the leader of a bunch of goofy lifeguards. One of the stories in this book just got published in the Woven Tale Press.
Okay.
Which is a really nice literary magazine that a friend of mine, Sid Lee, poet laureate in Vermont, he liked the story, which I just wrote fairly recently and put it in the book, sent it to them, and they just published it this month. So that's good for my ego. It's called The One That Got Away, and it's a lifeguard story about fish and a girl in 1971. So the Woven Press.
Right.
Yeah.
You kind of focus on other aspects of the 60s and 70s that nobody really thinks about. And what are some of those cultural milestones that you're able to touch upon that you hope from a historical perspective people are going to be able to appreciate?
Oh, another tough question. I guess this is why you're so good at this. I'm interested in showing the rise and fall of the 60s in these stories also, and how the 70s, the sexual revolution entered its reign of terror phase in the 70s. So, it was love everybody for a while there, and it was very idealistic and very nice. And, sex was part of it, but sex was just making love. It was always love. And then by the time you get into the later 70s, it becomes just a hedonistic practice, and the love part was forgotten. And I feel that the great hope of Aquarius got kind of torn down by the late 70s. And Jimmy Carter did a great speech, his Malaise speech, and people made fun of him, and it didn't help him politically. But he was right. We were at the end of the 70s. We were in a malaise. We were in a moral malaise, and it wasn't making us happy. That was the surprise. A lot of young people found that all the wild, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, it wasn't really making us that happy after all. Something else was required. Some substance was required, and connections that we weren't making. Yeah.
Right.
So
Bruce, if people want to learn more about your book and learn more about you, where's the best place they could go to?
Oh, gosh. I have a Facebook page for the book.
Okay.
That's a start. And I'm joining Instagram, and I don't even know how that works yet, but my publisher has that as part of my package, so I'm supposed to do that.
Okay.
And that's about all I've got right now. Maybe I'll get some help and set up a website, but I'm just not there yet. You can see I'm lagging behind in lots of ways. The very fact that the book itself is 50 years late, but technologically, I'm pretty bad.
For those that are listening to this podcast, we'll have a link in the show notes to Bruce Paul Richards' Facebook author page. Bruce, this has been great. I'm just so excited about the book, and congratulations on the publication of it. And I see that as of this recording, I see that you do have author readings that are popping up as well for you that you're going to be doing as well, correct?
Oh, yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. Next Thursday in Bradford, Vermont, at the Space on Main, which is a wonderful place set up by Monique Priestley, who's a representative. She's also a former student of mine. She's a state representative and a dynamo. She just does everything. It's incredible. And she's having me do a reading at 6:00 at the Space on Main next Thursday. So that's going to be fun, although I'll be nervous for a while. I hope somebody goes to it. But then I mentioned, that class of 78. So I'm going to be at the bar Bombay, the biggest bar on the Jersey Shore, which is owned by another former student of mine, Tommy Generone by name, and I'm going to do a reading and book signing there on Thursday, August 31st. So those are two events that I have, and yeah, I'm going to see all those old students and even some old teachers, and I hope we're not all too shocked about what we look like now. Tempus Fugit. Yeah.
All right.
It's
All
really
right. Well,
nice
thank
of
you
you
so much,
to have
Bruce.
me on. I appreciate the thoughtful questions, and yeah, thanks a million.
All right. You're welcome. And come back on when you get your next book coming out.
Thank you. Sorry.
It's okay. I'll timestamp it.
Yeah. Hello? It's for you, Leslie. I don't know what it is. But... All right. Where was I?
You're talking about that your creative writing class, your lessons.
Oh yeah. Okay. Should I start all over on that, or just?
Oh no, I can edit it
Just
through. Just
continue where
keep going. Yeah.
Okay.